Hey friends, it's Chanelle recording this video on Molokai because I'm awful and decided to hang out with my auntie on an island that I've never been to before, and I haven't hung out with this auntie in 2 years, so that's why I haven't been in class. And today we're going to be looking at analyzing equilibrium. If you're in micro or macroeconomics with Paul Briggs this semester, you may find this info useful. I'm recording this for some of my friends who missed the lecture, and yeah, so stay tuned if you want to know more about economics. So Paul likes to simplify this process into 3 steps. One is what shifts: your supply curve or your demand curve. And in this class, because it's basic economics, there's only going to be one shift. And if there's a shift in your supply curve, there's going to be a movement in your demand curve. But if there's a shift in your demand curve, then you'll see a movement along the supply curve. Step 2, does it shift to the left or to the right? And then step 3, how does this affect equilibrium price, which I like to simplify to EP, and equilibrium quantity, EQ. Let's review demand and supply and what affects them. Demand. What causes shifts? Consumer income, prices of related goods. By related goods, I mean substitutes and complements. Tastes, which vary from consumer to consumer. And expectations. Shifts all belong to demand. Remember that. What causes movements? The actual price of the good itself that it's being sold at in the market. Movements always correspond with quantity demanded. Always. If you notice here, every single variable here, besides the price of the good, is a shift. Price equals a movement, quantity demanded. Here's supply. Input prices or resource costs cause a shift in supply, as well as technology, taxes, and number of producers. Shifts go with supply. Movements. What causes a movement along the supply curve is the actual price of the good that it's being sold for in the market. Movement, quantity supplied. So it's the exact same as demand. Price, quantity demanded. Price, quantity supplied. Everything other than price is a shift, which belongs to supply. Now that we've gotten that straightened out, let's go back to the past when Paul was talking about Wailua soda. What exactly do you need to make Lilikoi Wailua soda? You need things like water, sugar, Lilikoi flavoring, food coloring, land, laborers, a factory, which is located in Texas. It's hella weird. Packaging, and glass bottles. These things are your resource costs. Resource costs are the things that you give up to make something. If we were talking about flour, then we could be talking about wheat and land and labor and whatever else you need to make flour. Input prices are the actual prices of these things to make the desired good. Okay. Now that we have our product and the things that it takes to make the product, let's look at 4 scenarios. These 4 scenarios are super important for the midterm exam, and you should write these graphs onto your little 3x5 cheat sheet, because without these graphs you're not gonna pass the last portion of the exam. There's multiple choice, at least 50 questions, and then the back portion you have to draw your own graphs. So I would highly recommend that you write these down. Alright, scenario 1. It's summertime. Our product right now is Lilikoi Wailua soda. Always start your graph off with a basic supply and demand curve intersecting each other. On your X, you have your quantity, and on your Y, you have price. This price is the actual price of the good in the market that it's being sold at. Alright, so if it's summertime, we need to ask ourselves, do consumers want more Wailua soda? Well, typically yes, because it's hot and people will demand more. So now we're going to draw our demand curve shifting to the right. So let's draw another demand curve right here. The part where your demand and supply curve intersect, that is known as your equilibrium, and that is the desired outcome you want in the market, but that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Anyways, this is our first demand curve, so I like to write it as D sub 1 and D sub 2 just to differentiate. And because summertime falls under an expectation, I guess, or a taste as well. I don't know. A change in climate could affect people's tastes and expectations. Where was I going with this? I have no idea. Anyways, so we have our shift to the right, which is an increase in demand. And then as you can see, the supply stays the same. So I'm going to drop down a nice little dotted line. And now we have quantity 1 and quantity 2. And then after that, you're going to draw your line here. So this is your first price. And then this is your second price right here. Okay, and then as you can see, the price goes up because people's demands increase, and then the price increased. So I like to call this graph the equilibrium price goes up. Oh, that's an ugly arrow. And then your equilibrium quantity goes up. Alright. Okay, so that's scenario 1. Let's move on to scenario 2. A hurricane hits the sugar plantation that Wailua soda uses to get their sugar. We have our supply and demand curve. Now, if a hurricane hits the sugar plantation, what's going to be affected? The supply is going to be affected because one of your inputs over here is decreasing. So because one of the inputs is decreasing, it's going to cause the supply to decrease, which therefore will cause a shift to the left. So I'm drawing another supply curve. Now I can label this S1 and S2, and we'll draw a line going to the left. And now we have our points of equilibrium. This one is going to be Q1, and then this one's going to be Q2, and then, oh, yikes. That's gonna be your first price, and then your second price. So thanks to the hurricane, you have less Wailua soda, and Wailua soda now costs more. That's unfortunate. Okay, and then I like to label this scenario as the equilibrium price goes up and the equilibrium quantity goes down. Alright, scenario 3. Coca-Cola has a sale. In this scenario, Coca-Cola is a substitute. Substitutes are goods that are used in place of each other, and if one were to decrease, then the demand for the other will shoot. Let's look at this. Okay. It says, when a fall in the price of one good reduces demand for another good, the two goods are called substitutes. So basically what is happening here is that if the price of Coca-Cola decreases, then our demand for Wailua soda is going to decrease. So we're going to see a shift to the left because we're going to go out and buy more Coca-Cola. So let's draw our demand curve here. Now we have our 2 points of equilibrium right here, right here. We have D sub 1, D sub 2, and then drop down our points. Then we have our Q1, Q2, and then P2, and P1. So the price went down, and the demand shifted to the left. So now this one is both the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity both went down. Alright. And last but not least, the price of sugar decreases. If sugar becomes cheaper, then you'll be able to make more Wailua soda. So that's going to affect the supply and shift it to the right because there was an increase in supply. So we got this. We have S1 to S2. It's a really ugly graph. We have Q2 and then Q1. And this is P1 and P2. So now we have a decrease in the market price and an increase in supply, which is a pretty favorable outcome. So this scenario is equilibrium price goes up that was a mistake. Equilibrium price goes down and equilibrium quantity goes up. Alright. And that's that. If you need help on the practice questions, just let me know and I can explain.